Roll up. Step right this way, ladies and gentlemen. It's the Canberra Clown Show, the greatest show on earth. And this week, our travelling circus headed to Sydney's western suburbs for a knockout comedy performance by everybody's favourite pair of climate clowns, Al Bozo and his sidekick, Bobo Bowen, in their favourite clown car, the EV.
Hey everyone, it's a great day in Eastern Creek today. We've got 60 new electric trucks for Team Global Express. Charged by these Australian-made chargers, solar panels on the roof, batteries. It's great for emissions, it's great for drivers, it's cheaper for the company, it's better for our environment. It's a good day for Western Sydney, a good day for Team Global Express, and a good day for Australia.
Just not a great day, in my opinion, for people who want their parcels delivered not in clown cars, but with the efficiency and reliability traditionally provided by the good old-fashioned petrol engine. Apparently, some of Bobo Bowen's EV trucks only go about 100k before needing to be recharged for 90 minutes, and even less if it's a hot or cold day and the heating or the air conditioning is on. But why have one clown in your car when you can make it a double act?
This is a great day. This is a game changer. 1/3 of the heavy vehicles operating out of this very big facility in Western Sydney will be all electric. This transformation is a great example of my government working with the private sector, with the business community to assist the economy, to assist them, but also to assist our objective of heading towards net zero.
Glad you kept repeating that word assist, Al Bozo. Yes, we the taxpayers have certainly assisted your performance by giving, wait for it, drum roll, over $20 million of taxpayers' money to assist the purchase of these clown cars. Sorry, my mistake, these trucks. 60 trucks. That's around $335,000 we have paid to assist each and every one of these trucks. No wonder Christine Holgate, yes, that's her on the far right there, the former postie chick who got shafted by ScoMo and now has a new gig. No wonder Christine was jumping for joy, $335,000 per truck, you little beauty. But hey, what's a lazy 20 million bucks when, as the Daily Telegraph reports, there are claims Energy Minister Chris Bowen has lowballed the cost of transitioning the country's power grid to net zero by as much as $100 billion. What's that to a Labor poly? That's $100 billion of your money extra that's going to be splurged in this net zero comedy show. Of course, at the same time as wasting all our money on hopelessly inefficient renewables, Bobo Bowen has been out there disparaging the one energy source with zero emissions that we actually do have a potential abundant supply of. Here he was on Q&A last year trashing nuclear.
I can't think of a worse fit for Australia than nuclear energy. It's extraordinarily expensive. We don't have a nuclear industry in Australia, so we'd be starting from scratch.
What a joker. Until recently, we didn't have a renewables industry either. We started that from scratch. We don't have a green hydrogen industry either. We're supposedly starting that from scratch. Everything this bozo is doing is starting from scratch. Even the kids spotted that sleight of hand.
The cost of nuclear is clearly highly contentious, and you know what the best way to find out the cost of nuclear energy is? It's to lift the nuclear energy ban, because at that point, you can actually see nuclear reactors, what they will cost, because at this stage, no company is able to propose for nuclear reactors to be built in this country.
Yeah, that was 17-year-old Will Shackle, who was on here on Outsiders, winning over the tough Q&A crowd and stealing the show from Bobo with a dose of common sense. But Will's not alone. Over at the Centre for Independent Studies, the talented Miss Zoe Hilton ripped into Bobo Bowen's shocky pea and thimble clown act and tore it apart.
Energy Minister Chris Bowen loves going on and on about how expensive nuclear energy is and how cheap renewables are. And the media loves repeating this message.
It's extraordinarily expensive.
But where did Minister Bowen get this from? It all comes from the CSIRO's annual GenCost report. The CSIRO decided to exclude large-scale nuclear from their analysis and only include small modular reactors, or SMRs. Now this might seem a bit odd, given that large-scale nuclear is a proven technology used in more than 30 countries worldwide, while SMR technology is still under development. In fact, the CSIRO based their SMR cost estimate on a single cancelled project and erroneously included financing costs, which they did not include for any other technology.
Well spotted, Zoe. Great work. So which clowns decided not to include the most basic nuclear energy of them all in their Australian energy costing report? Our chief scientific body, no less. Here's Paul Graham, chief energy clown, sorry, typo, chief energy economist at the CSIRO, which is itself an almost perfect anagram for circus, explaining why large-scale nuclear energy, which is relied on and used in over 30 countries, as Zoe said, around the world, was not included in the CSIRO's energy costings report. What a farce. Roll up to the CSIRO circus.
So we had some face-to-face workshops in 2018 with industry groups, and there weren't any nuclear experts at those workshops because it just wasn't, I don't think it was just on their radar at the time. Large-scale nuclear isn't the right size for Australia.
The CSIRO's decision to exclude large-scale nuclear was based on a workshop they ran 6 years ago in which no nuclear experts were present. Because why consult an actual expert when you can rely on the opinions of renewables, coal and gas investors?
Remember, we taxpayers fund the CSIRO circus to the tune of billions of dollars. As Zoe points out, they hardly fill one with confidence.
In order to maybe do a large-scale nuclear, there's a few things we'll have to work through. This question of whether it is appropriate size for Australia, and then if you thought it was, how would you come up with an Australianised number? A couple of things that we'd have to think through, so we'll do some more thinking on that.
Heaven help us, as Tony Abbott tweeted in response to Zoe's excellent video, quote, "The recent omission of large-scale nuclear from the CSIRO's energy costings report not only undermines our nation's ability to affordably reduce our emissions, but further justifies the public's declining trust in government institutions." Well said, Tony. You can, of course, find Zoe's full video on the Centre for Independent Studies website. Just go to cis.org.au, and why not sign up for membership while you're there? They do an amazing job at the CIS. Oh, and did I forget to mention, at the same time as Bobo and Albozo are running around spending squillions on batteries and electric vehicles and solar panels and all that schmozzles, yep, these are the clowns determining the energy future, the prosperity and the standard of living of this country. I say, sacked a lot of them. Oh, and by the way, if the clowns at the CSIRO had bothered to do any research, they would have discovered, as the excellent Joanna Nova points out on her Jo Nova blog, the French built a large-scale nuclear reactor in just 7 years, way back in 1976. Meanwhile, even the ABC admits that Bowen's baby's lithium-ion batteries caused more than 1,000 fires in Australia alone in the last year. And this week, a massive fire was caused at a car salvage yard in Essex, with 8 vehicles destroyed and the culprit believed to be an EV. What would Deep Purple have to say about that?
Now, I have a question to ask you this evening. What do all of these international locations have in common? Japan, Indonesia, Spain, India, Cambodia, the United States, Vietnam, China, the Cook Islands, and the United Kingdom all have in common. Well, yes, you'd be right if you said they're all locations that Airbus Albo has flown to on your dollar, nicknaming the plane after his puppy. But what they all have in common is that he has spent more time in each of those locations than he has spent as Prime Minister in Alice Springs. Now, last night, we told you that he flew in late afternoon, went to a controlled media appearance on a federal government-funded and subsidised building site. He then sat down with a conversation of a series of local leaders, from the mayor to some business leaders, and it was at 9 o'clock Eastern time yesterday when a social media video was released by the Prime Minister's office. Here he is, here to help. I'm just here to listen. Lots of the faces that you may have seen pop up here and there on Sky News. The Prime Minister was listening. The Prime Minister was there to help. Well, one of the people that you've seen an awful lot of here on Sky News, and one of the men who has kept an absolute relentless focus on the country knowing what's really happening in Alice Springs, is the bloke who runs the local bakery. Now, he was spotted in the video with the Prime Minister. He had a photo with the Prime Minister, like every citizen should. But what he had to say today about the meeting with the Prime Minister gives us an insight into how clueless Albo actually is about why he even needs to be there.
I explained that people had machetes held to their throats in their beds. I've told him about the women that have been in my shop crying because they've been broken into. They've had people in their beds. Mate, he actually didn't know how bad this was. He didn't know how bad this was.
Now, either he was lying in that conversation last night, or that's an insight into the bubble within the bubble within the bubble within the bubble that a Prime Minister ends up living in. The idea that this Prime Minister, in all of the times in the media, from breakfast television through to clickbait websites, endless radio interviews, and everything that we've been doing here for years, let alone what Jacinta Nampijinpa Price has been saying, first as a councillor, then, of course, in leadership on the Alice Springs Council, when she was running for the seat of Lingiari, when she was running for the Senate, when she became the senator, when she brought the victims of such violence to Canberra, or almost every significant speech that she made for a year about why the Voice wasn't the right answer. Now, this bloke has either cut himself off from reality, or he has built all of these walls around himself that he's not seeing what's really going on. He's only seeing either what people are telling him or what he's willing to hear. Now, I put the challenge to the media that was going to be with the Prime Minister today in Alice Springs. Would they ask him about domestic violence? We showed you the numbers, not just in the Northern Territory, but in Alice Springs specifically. And well done to the person who asked him this.
Prime Minister, you'll be aware that in Central Australia there's some of the highest rates of domestic and family violence in the whole country. You yourself the other day said the government needs to do more in this space. Now, domestic violence advocates have repeatedly called for needs-based funding in the Northern Territory as opposed to population-based funding. Is now the time for you to take action on this?
Interesting what his answer is going to be. Is he going to speak the way that he normally does, that all men need to change, and have the focus on the perpetrators needing to change? Well, will it surprise you that he speaks differently in Alice Springs than he did in Canberra or anywhere else, when the issues, of course, are significant for the Indigenous community?
We've put $40 million additional funding into domestic violence and services just here in this community. And I note that before we came to government, that funding for local community services was about to drop off a cliff.
So we found a way to blame the previous government. He's been in charge for 2 years. He spent more time in all of those international destinations on individual trips, not collectively. Individually, he has spent more time in all of these different places than he has in Alice Springs. He turns it into an issue for the last government. But when he's away from Alice Springs, what's the message that he says?
Men need to take responsibility for their actions. They need to be prepared to speak about those issues, and where they see issues,
be prepared to raise them.
But why not make the same point about Indigenous men? Now, obviously, men means all men. It means people from the oldest living culture to the people who arrived here yesterday, to the people who were born here, to the people who believe or don't believe in certain gods. It doesn't matter what your skin colour, race, etc., etc. But if all men need to change their attitudes when you're at a place that has such a high rate of it, why wouldn't you repeat that? Because, of course, maybe the Prime Minister isn't aware of it. Now, if that's the case, that's particularly frightening, but I think we both know that he is aware of it. There's just a different set of words that you use when you're talking to people in Canberra or Sydney or Melbourne or Brisbane, when you're on the national media, but when you're actually in the place where the demographics don't match the talking point, well, then suddenly we get blaming of the previous government. As for what he actually announced today, yes, a little more funding for this, a little more funding for that, but of course, the reality is that it's about the Prime Minister of the country knowing where the problems are in the country. And I will take Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price every minute of every hour of every day over the clueless performance from a Prime Minister who spends more time in Cambodia than he does in Alice Springs.
What's to actually show for that? 15 months ago, the Prime Minister was shamed into visiting Alice Springs, making an announcement of $250 million. But what did the now $300 million do in order to stop the riot that took place on our streets? This is what we need to understand. Where is the money being spent?
And just finally, to drive home the point about just how little time the Prime Minister actually spent there. Yesterday he flew in the late afternoon. This morning he did a press conference at about 9:30. He then was in Queensland by lunchtime. He didn't even spend a full day. Just as he spent more time flying to the tennis than he did on the ground, he spent more time in the hotel room than he did actually talking to people. And even when he spoke to those people, apparently he didn't even know what was really going on.